First of all, we have Jeff Burnstein, president of the A3, the US Association of Advancing Automation. Jeff, you are clearly a guiding voice for automation in North America and in the world for decades already. So as president, you advocate for innovation-driven industrial growth, and the A3 represents more than 1,200 companies, which is a target we have with Alex to achieve for the 50th anniversary. So please, Jeff, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor to be here at this occasion of the 40th anniversary of AER. And on behalf of A3, I'd like to extend our deepest congratulations to all of you in building this association. I was involved in robotics for now 44 years because our association in the US started out as a robotics association 50 years ago, 51 years ago now. So I remember when Luis Masanez formed this great association that you have. I'm gonna just run through a few things here about A3 just so you can know us a little bit better. So the mission is to educate companies all over the world on how to successfully apply robotics and AI and machine vision and motion control and all the technologies that go into building an automated solution. So you can see these are our technology sectors now. We started out as just robotics back in 1974. We're based in the United States, but we're a global trade group. We have members all over the world, including Spain, 35 different countries. If you look at the distribution of the membership, it's the entire ecosystem. It's suppliers, it's system integrators, it's educators, consulting firms. Everyone who's involved in these technologies has a place in A3. The current state of the market, I'm not going to dwell on this right now. I'm going to speak as someone who's been in this for over 4 decades. I look at the trend line. There have been many ups and downs along the way. But if you look at the trend line, and this chart goes back to 2007, it's going up. And right now, things are flat in the US, but I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It might actually even go down in the second quarter of this year. It's possible because of all the uncertainty around things like tariffs and how it's going to impact the US economy. But this is a good news story. Again, you can look at the quarterly fluctuations and get all involved in that. I'm more concerned about the long term. I believe, and I think all of you do as well, that we're in the early days of robotics adoption around the world. Things have changed so much since the beginning of the robotics industry. So one of the encouraging things that we've observed is that when I started, it was about 80% automotive in North America. And now it's 50-50 between non-automotive industries adopting robotics and automotive. That's a very positive sign for the future. These non-automotive industries include food and life sciences, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, but also construction, agriculture, so many industries, so much interest in robotics and automation. Again, you can look at what the leading application areas are. We collect statistics that we report quarterly, so all of this information is available at automate.org, which is our website. We recently started collecting information on collaborative robots, and that is important because as new form factors have emerged, new applications have been enabled. So right now, while we're collecting this information, we hope to also soon start collecting information on autonomous mobile robots because that logistics space is growing as well as other spaces. So we need to keep an eye on the form factors. Maybe one day we'll be collecting information on humanoid robots. And I look forward to the discussion of that later in the program today. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but trend line, very positive. I was really pleased to hear the representative from the government talking about the support for robotics here in Spain. We don't actually have that much support from the US government, but we're trying to turn that around. So we recently proposed a vision of a national strategy. We appeared before a House Select Committee on China recently. The US government is obviously looking at how they maintain its leadership in some areas and become leaders vis-a-vis what's going on in China. So a lot of concern about that. We presented a national strategy that really didn't focus on China, but to them, I think it meant something because they realize they need to take steps if the US is going to remain a global leader in this space, and it's important. So these are the 6 key policy priorities that we outlined. Won't go through them all. The first one, though, having a single place in the US government where you can talk about robotics. We don't have that now. You have to go to multiple places to talk about where you could possibly have your technology applied or what you might want in terms of workforce development. So there's no central place. There's no strategy. We don't have a national strategy. We need that. We need a central place. Incentives to drive adoption, tax incentives. Instead of saying robots replace people, instead of being worried about these technologies, if companies want to be globally competitive, they need to automate. The US government should be encouraging that, especially if they want to reshore manufacturing to the United States. It's going to be automated. We need to incentivize. Others are doing it, and we pointed out that, of course, China is doing that as well. The government itself in the United States does not take full advantage of robotics. So they're worried about, we don't have enough ships. Well, they don't use robots for shipbuilding. They don't use it for logistics. And there are other applications that the US government should be a leader in adopting robotics, and they aren't. Expand workforce training. Okay, so if we bring back a lot of manufacturing to the United States, we already have a shortage of skilled workers. So if we don't invest heavily in workforce development, then we're never going to be able to really fully take advantage of these technologies. So we're pushing very hard on that. Funding academic and commercial innovation. Historically, the United States government has done a lot with helping universities and their programs and research, but very little in terms of supporting startups that have impressive new technology and other commercial entities. So we're advocating for that. And industry standards, you know, A3 has played a leading role in developing robot safety standards dating back to 1986. We also have mobile robot safety standards and have worked on collaborative as well. And now we are working on humanoid robot standards with others. So standardization is going to be, I think, critical. The government can help move that along. The one bad thing about standards, it takes forever to get a global standard. You know, 3 years is like warp speed for the global standards community. But things are changing so rapidly, we need to move more quickly. So again, this is us. Automate.org, you can find out all kinds of information. And happy to answer any questions later, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now will be the moment for Susanne Bieller, General Secretary of the International Federation of Robotics. I think most of us know that AER is part of it. So Susanne brings a global perspective to our discussion, having to deal with industry leadership worldwide. And I will highlight the advocacy of responsible robotics and innovation and alignment with societal values and global sustainability goals that you.
First of all, I would like to congratulate AER Automation for this great anniversary, 40 years. That's even longer than IFR is existing. So actually it was the other way around, and Luis Basanes was one of the founding members of our organization. But so it's really an honor to be here. Thank you for having me here, and whenever we can support you, we're here to do that. And so I'm enjoying this day to celebrate together with you, all of you. It's great to see how AER has actually evolved over the last few years since I'm actually working with you. So it's a great achievement. So congratulations also to the team, to the board, but also to Alex, Raquel, and Alfonso for all the power you bring in to develop that industry. I think I do not have to say a lot about the IFI. I expect most of you know what we're doing. We're working as the voice of the robotics industry, so we try to really bring all the players together around the globe. We try to bridge all the associations to collaborate and to join forces to bring the whole industry forward, and also foster further deployment in also new industries that need the support of automation to further grow. And then we also do quite some policy support, not at the level that typically the colleagues that join me on the panel today will work at. We'd rather be the point of contact for United Nations organizations that deal with robotics. There are quite some already. Also support the OECD in their activities to bring and move robotics forward. So, and then we of course also support our members in talking to their governments. And last but not least, IFR is known for the statistics, and I'm happy to show you a preview of what we expect to have to see published by the end of the years. So this is now some preliminary figures on how the global robotics market is performing. Last year, we have published them in April, so it's a data freeze from April. The final results will, and that's my disclaimer here, will certainly show some changes to the data I showed you today, and we'll publish them on 25th September in World Robotics 2025. So if you're interested to learn more about that, you'll have to look at our presentation then later on. So how is the global situation evolving? I think it's not a surprise to you that installations actually went further down with -3%. I think looking at the overall industrial and manufacturing development, -3% is actually not that bad as it sounds. So we're happy with that, and we're also, when we look at where are those robots installed, we see that electronics and automotive for some years now is really fighting for first position in the most important customer industries. Now electronics took over again since they grow by 1%, while automotive is facing a decline by 7%, so only ranked 2 now. We see that metal machinery is a driver for growth, and we also see that plastic and chemical products, as Jeff also said, for the US, and as well as the food industry is growing. So overall, I think we see many new industries supporting the robotics. If you look at the global perspective, we see that Asia is actually declining slightly. Basically, all regions are declining. So it's not a disbalance at some point, but it's really all going more or less the same direction. Asia, Australia is now taking 72% of all installations. Europe's looking at 16% of the global installations, and the Americas are at 10%. We have published those data for the Automate show 2 weeks ago, and Jeff already mentioned we have a decline. So overall, our preliminary figures indicate a decline of -9% for the US. But the good news is the automotive industry is actually a further driver of growth, and I think that's important that this continues also, because it will be hard to overcome that. We have to invest a lot in the other industries, in the general industries, to compensate if automotive industry was actually doing not that well. So these are some good signs. I also want to give you a sneak preview on the Spanish data. You haven't seen that published yet, so that's first for you. We see a 2% growth actually for Spain. So this is really one of the few European countries, I would say, that sees a growth in 2024. And automotive is slightly declining. Also metal is slightly declining actually. So third strongest industry now is the food industry, which had some growth in the last year. Plastics and chemicals also growing slightly. Electronics is doing quite well. More than doubled the installations, though on a small level, and then there's a lot of other industries adding to that. So a great mixed picture, I think, and something you can work on for the current year. We're a bit hesitant to give an outlook, but there's a lot of political uncertainties, of course. We have the trade war, the tariff dispute is still not solved, and we all know that uncertainty factors typically weigh on the willingness to invest. So as long as it's not solved, we cannot expect major investments, but we hope that this will be settled soon. Of course, certain countries will benefit from that situation. I think India is one of the countries where we can see with all the East-West conflict, they kind of in the middle and benefit from that. We also saw that the outlook for North America is positive, and with the current administration's policy, it's actually, Jeff mentioned that beforehand, it's a driver for further automation and investing in robotics. But Europe and Asia are still a bit on the hesitant side so far. But looking forward to the final figures, and you will also show a bit more on the regions in Automatica show next June. With that, I would like to hand back.
Introduce Søren. So now is the turn for Søren Elmer, CEO of Odense Robotics. Okay, I think everybody in robotics here knows what's going on in Odense. Nobody understands how a city of 200,000 inhabitants is what it is today. So Søren is the leader of the cluster. So he can show us a lot about the regional collaboration, education, innovation, how a big and small city becomes a big reference in the automation and in the collaboration between all the robotics companies. Okay. So thank you, Søren.
And thank you very much. I'm so happy, pleased, and honored to be here today. Also yesterday, meeting you again, new faces, familiar faces, friends, collaboration partners. Huge honor. And from the whole Danish ecosystems of robotics, automation, and drones, I will wish you huge congratulations with the 40th years anniversary. Thank you. Congratulations. That needs an applause. About 3 years ago, I met Alex for the first time. I met many of you for the first time, and what a meeting. I saw many similarities between us. As persons, I also like music, Alex, but also as ecosystems. We have many similarities when we look at each other. 40 years ago, AER was established. 40 years ago, I was 7 years. 40 years ago, the adventure of robotics started in Odense. Not with Odense Robotics, but with the collaboration between a shipyard owned by a Maersk Mc-Kinney Group and the university and other collaboration partners. They had a common mission, and that was to develop flexible welding robot because they needed one to keep up competitiveness and so on and so forth. From that time, our journey started, not as an association, but as an ecosystem. And what started it? It started what we have in common. We are on a common mission. It's all about innovation, because we need technology to provide robotic solutions and automation solutions, of course. We need collaboration. That's our experience for the last 40 years. And again, a similarity, because when I'm hearing already the talks from today, you're working together and you've done it for 40 years. So collaboration is also key. And the goal is, of course, to ensure growth in the global robotics and automation community, because that's needed. We are on a common mission to make the world a better place with robotics and automation solutions. It's needed. It's needed within the demographics, it's needed for supporting the green transition and so on and so forth. So many similarities. My name is, as mentioned, Søren Elmer. I'm coming from the Danish robotics ecosystem. We have very many kinds of varieties of robot, drones and automation companies, but also other important stakeholders, knowledge institutions, such as DJI, which I know many of you know because there's a close collaboration already. We also have companies such as Universal Robots, Mobile Industrial Robots, OnRobot, so on and so forth. By the way, companies I just mentioned also placed here in Barcelona in Spain. Our community is also embracing the drone sector and has been doing that for the last 15 years. We have an international drone test center in the city of Odense, but we are also very focused on actually talking about innovation. Why are we active in drones? First of all, because we have a municipality who saw the possibilities in having an airport that didn't have that much commercial traffic. What could you use it for then? It was fully functional. Drone innovation. You had a university was ready to establish a STU, a US center at STU. Then you also had the academia on board, and then the companies, they started to arise. So what we think we have been succeeding with for the last 40 years, or maybe a bit less, that is actually the triple helix, combining the industry, collaborating with academia and other institutions in general, but fully supported also by the local government and the national government, because that's also needed. We are talking about providing robotic solutions to many things, especially to the end users, both within known areas but also new areas. And took this picture because one of the huge agendas we also are looking at is to ensure the green transition. In Denmark, we are also a bit focused on wind turbines and building those. And when we are looking at industries that are using robots, we can also see that within industries that are handling large structures, such as wind turbines, ships, constructions, and much more, the tradition for robot and automation may be a bit lesser than in traditional manufacturing. So it's also about being visionary and seeing possibilities. Where can we also develop new possibilities? And that's also one of my advices, but also purpose of the discussion later. Let's also together look at the next possibilities. One of them we see is actually to develop technology that can handle large structures such as wind turbines. I could talk very much about the association that we are. I will not. We can put that in the debate, but I'm just saying, when we're talking about collaboration, it's also nice to actually, you can document it. Every year we are asking in our ecosystem, how are you doing? What are you doing? But also, how are you doing it? And collaboration is part of our DNA. As you can see here, the companies are collaborating with each other, but they're definitely also collaborating with the research and knowledge institution and many more, and also abroad. So this is the way. Organizations is important. 10 years ago, Odense Robotics was established as a local cluster in Odense and was founded by the need of the industry. The industry asked for an organization to ensure visibility, attraction of talent, ensuring the startups could grow good and fast, and so on and so forth. 4 years ago, we became national clusters, and now we are covering the whole of Denmark, population of almost 6 million people. And ensuring that we are collaborating across both in Denmark, but also with a strong global outreach. We're seeing robots and automation in many sectors, especially in manufacturing and logistics, and the possibilities are great for adoption. I really liked your point, Jeff, about adoption. We are many that have a task in ensuring this, but also actually looking to our governments and seeing how can they support the adoption of automation robots into new sectors, such as, for example, construction and building, or in the agriculture and food sector. How can we ensure that they will use robots and drones even more? This is our way of seeing the world. We need to connect the ecosystem. We need to ensure that we have, for our sake, because we are representing the robot automation drone companies in Denmark, we need to face the ones who are ready to automate, and even more important, those that are not. So as we heard in the welcome speech, we have a task in ensuring bridging the gap for the automation potential. When we're asking the robot companies, they're saying one of the biggest challenges is the lack of awareness among the end users. When we ask the end users, their largest challenges is the lack of knowledge how to implement automation and robots into their production. Awareness, knowledge, that's something we can collaborate about. We have a common mission. Thank you very much for the short introduction. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Søren. Now is the time to introduce Patrick Schwarzkopf, Managing Director of the VDMA Robotics and Automation branch. Okay. So we look forward an innovation-friendly regulation and human-centric approach to robotics and automation, and you are leading the branch inside the VDMA.
Hello. Yeah, so I have some slides as well. So I just click on, okay. Super, hi. So I've known the AER for a long time because I started working for the VDMA in 1999. Back then in assembly technology, I think you were called also ATP. Tecnologías de Producción, AER, a long time ago. Luis Basanies knows it, and I must say, looking at your history, 40 years now, it's amazing what you've created and how far you have come, what you have achieved. The network is really big, there's a lot of innovation, and the team is really dynamic, really a lot of doers, and it's really impressive. Bueno, basta ya de elogios. Vamos a ver el tema. So the VDMA, I don't know, it's a very big association because it has 35 associations under one roof. And so I represent one of these 35 associations, which is VDMA Robotics and Automation. So it's basically the counterpart of AER. And we do things that associations do: standards development, interest representation with policymakers, trade shows. We founded together with Munich trade fairs, the Automatica. And I hope you will all visit it at the end of June. And we do market analysis, future studies. We bring the competitors together on a neutral ground, and they say where the pain points are, and then we try to get solutions. Yeah. But my topic now today is a bit of it's the Robotics and Automation Action Plan for Europe, which we've created. It's a very high level document. But in the last 2 years, we had really a great access to policymakers, especially in Germany, but also in Europe. And so I'd like to talk about this. It's a bit of a wake-up call, so not only positive, so I think we should, with all the great innovation and robotics technology that comes out in Europe, looking ahead into the future, should take a step back and maybe critically reflect on where do we stand, what's happening in the next years, and how well are we prepared for this. But I'd like to discuss this. Of course, we have 4 challenges, and we all know robotics is the enabling technology for demographic decline. We need more resilience and sovereignty. We have eroding competitiveness. We need to maybe bring down costs, be more competitive. We need to make sure we reach climate neutrality and sustainability, circular economy. So many challenges, and I think robotics and automation provides a lot of answers, which here in this room we all are aware of. But if we look at, and that's the figures that many of you know from the IFR about robot density, how robotized are these countries? If we look at this picture, we added 3 lines because it's only the European countries. So Korea, number 1, is missing, and Singapore. So it's the European countries and their robot densities. You see Germany is number 1, 429 robots per 10,000 employees, but China has 470. But if we look, that's 3 times as automated as Europe. And it's twice as automated as the EU. So it should make us think. Yeah? If we look at the share of the European companies in annual industrial robot installations, you can say, yeah, of course it's gone down because China has come up. True, but still. So 10 years ago, the European share of annual industrial robot installations was 24%, so a quarter, and now it's down to 17%. So where's this trend line going? So you're talking about trend line, so I hope this is not continuing downward. So here is a thing that's very interesting. I don't know if we have sound, it might be too loud, I'll just play it. So, you know, in China, the Chinese New Year is the biggest thing. And they have a TV program on state TV, and maybe some of you have seen this video, where 1 billion people watch it. Just everybody in China watches it, and they showed this. You hear a little bit, the sound is enough, I think. So they're dancers. And here come the robots, and it's humanoid 16. And that's live on TV, it's not pre-produced. I cut it a bit short, it's like 2-3 minutes, and realized. And they were juggling a little bit, like so, yeah. You get the idea, but so what does that tell us? First of all, they have 16 robots that they can use on the stage. I don't know which humanoid, I don't know, do you have 16 bipeds available for the stage? Huh? So they're scaling. And you saw them maybe the half marathon. And they're going into the visionaries, like you're a visionary, you start with the humanoids, yeah? We need those visionaries. And they believe in this, and we should stop talking about whether legs are needed or not. It's beyond the point. And they also prepare a population that's very, very easygoing with robots. They embrace robotics. They're preparing them. And they're also telling a story. We are the leaders. We are the leaders. We are in the driver's seat here. We're not imitating the West. So I think that's something important to see. Another example, we know an American startup in humanoid robotics, Figure, in 2024 collected in euros $623 million in one round. And we had Spark, it's a 10-year program in the EU that was deemed the hugest ever civilian funding program over 10 years, and that was 700 million euros. So just one investment is what Europe puts in 10 years. So we should see the order of magnitude here and compare it. How can we increase venture capital? Because everybody says we need to increase venture capital, but how can we do it? And the fact is, there is money. There are trillions. Institutional investors are sitting on trillions of euros, also in Europe. And I think we have to understand how we can make this capital flow in the right direction. And France has paved the way. They have a TB initiative where they got, in the first step, I think 12 billion additional euros by changing the regulation. So the institutional investors like pension funds and insurances, they are more likely to put it into startups. That's a regulatory thing. So you basically have to flick a switch and the money is there. So I think that's something that Europe needs to do. So what do we need? It's a bit, okay, we need a robotics boost for Europe, and we need to put it on the political agenda. We need to compare ourselves with the US and Asia. There's lots going on, and we need a bit of a benchmarking, competition roadmaps. We need to integrate with broader policy areas. What are we doing in agriculture? How can we put robotics in there? In healthcare, lab automation, all these things. Health industry, we need robots at every school. It should be like a computer or a mobile phone. It should be an experimental school robot there. We need automation incentives, and we need to support early adopters, farmers on the fields, whatever, to do that. We need more venture capital, I mentioned it. We need a lot of innovation, and Europe is actually really doing some great stuff. There's an IPSE, important project, Common European Interest, where they're building a cloud infrastructure. They're investing 5 billion, nobody's talking about it. We're coming up with data space technology. It's really exciting stuff. We should be embracing this and being a bit more proud of this. We need a European humanoid strategy, definitely. We don't have it. It's time to wake up. We need much, much more speed, and we need more awareness in the population for the benefits, why we need it, and what we need less of is regulatory burden. And really a lot less. So this is our paper. You can scan the QR code, and yeah, maybe you will find it interesting. And oops, sorry. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So I will explain you how it will go. So we will have three main blocks. Okay, we start on the boring side. Okay, so resilience, competitiveness. Then we go to people. Okay, then we will have questions and answers. So if somebody wants to interrupt, you can interrupt. We are thinking more at the end. So I will try to give a space to that because due to the people that we have here, so I think that it's going to be quite interesting, the questions that we can make with the market represented. Okay. We have the third block, sorry, is the sustainability, okay, and then the NDN paper of the associations and future trends will be the finish point, okay, just to finish up, okay. So please, if you can join. So we start first block with the competitiveness and resilience in a globalized world. No? So we have a lot of challenges in supply chain. We are talking about reshoring. We are talking about productivity boost. We are talking about future-proof manufacturing robotics. So the first question will be a generic one. So what roles should robotics and automation play on national strategies to build industrial resilience? Søren?
First of all, you need national strategy. And I can say so, we have had one or more, actually both within robotics and drones, and I would say the Danish government has been very in forefront there already. In 2016, we had the first drone strategy, and followed by a robot strategy in 2020. But it's also, and this is not saying it's good with a strategy, but it also needs an action plan and investments. So we know that deep tech takes time to develop, but also, as we have heard in the beginning, it also takes time to implement that. So a national strategy should both have the focus on the innovation, but especially also bringing the innovation into business.
So we're approached by different parts of the world, looking at robotics national and their national strategies, and there are two advices I give typically. Is first of all, which part of the value chain do you actually address? Do you want to develop your, depending also on the progress you already have or your legacy in robotics automation. There are countries looking at national strategy in robotics automation that haven't done much robotics and automation so far. They do not have the network of companies around here like we have it here. So for them it's more about the use of robotics and automation. And then I said, well, you cannot just say we want to use robotics automation, you need to know and define where to use it for. Do you need it in the service sector? Do you need it for defense purposes? Do you need it for manufacturing industry? So you really have to see the robotics and automation as a tool, and then have to look at why do you need it, where do you need it for, and from there you can start to develop your strategy. I think that's for at least for those countries that do not have own robot manufacturing or a lot of companies developing robotics, that's the kind of the way to go for the national strategies.
And do we see some countries that could be a reference to learn? So we have the example of Odense, for example, that has developed an environment that is good. Could you mention others that could be taken as a reference or not a reference, not an example to follow?
Well, if you're looking at a real small country that does not have robotics players right now, that does not have a strong manufacturing industry, you of course cannot try to copy from the US or from Germany or from Spain or from Japan, but you have to kind of develop your own ideas. So I think it's hard to copy. I know that the Odense cluster and what's happening in Denmark, European politicians would like to copy that to other parts of Europe, but it's just not working because these ecosystems evolve over time, and there's also typically some coincidences that come together that make a certain ecosystem more successful. Spain has worked for 40 years to grow their ecosystem, so you cannot just copy that because it's something that needs time to evolve.
Well, I'll tell you what happens if you don't have a national strategy. So robotics was invented in the United States. And what happened in the late 70s, early 80s, is we started to lose momentum in robotics, and everything had shifted to Japan and then Germany and Western Europe. We told the government at that time, you need to have a national strategy. Many of the things that I put in these recommendations that we told the government a few weeks ago, we told them back then, and they did nothing. They didn't think it was important. And now China is the leader in robotics, in part because they have a national strategy. There are countries around the world who are just getting involved in automating, like India. India has a Make in India program. They believe in robotics. It's one of the reasons that we've become active in India, and we have consultants working for us there. So it can be done if there's strong belief in it, if there's support from the government, if there are companies who are active in the space, it can be done. Spain's a great example. It takes a long time, but in this day and age, there are people you can point to and say, okay, look, Spain did it, look, Denmark did it. We can help, others here can help, and I think it's important that we do this around the world.
Thank you. Patrick?
I would totally agree that every national government should have a robotics strategy in place. When we started writing the paper, that's the first part. Every country, every region should have a national strategy in place. So that's kind of banal, it's kind of, there's nothing in it. It's that, yeah, there is something in it because they don't have it. And that's the first step. It's a big thing. And also when you look at China, they have very concrete plans. So they say, in 5 years' time, we want so and so many electric cars produced in China. By that. And by that time, we want that robot density, which they outdid themselves there. So they were faster. Yeah? So they have concrete goals in their national strategy. And I think that is something that we should look at. So do we have KPIs? Do we have concrete measures or concrete goals, targets that we reach, that we can measure? Yeah. And I think that would put a little bit more pressure on the system. I think that would be very important to do.
Do you think it would make sense to try to align countries to have a known politics that is shared, so that is beneficiary for several countries, but it's not only the German policy, the French, the US, the Mexican, whatever country, try to align. So we are international associations, some of us, some are more local, okay? But at the end, the sector, we see that we have companies born everywhere, both by other countries also. So we have shared resources, shared people, shared knowledge. No? So the targets at the end we have are not so different. Would it make sense to try to have at least a policy of minimums that we say each country at least should have that, and then you have the special cases? Or is too much to expect?
I think that's too much to expect. I think the important thing, why do we have a national strategy? We want our country to be more successful. We want companies in our country to be leaders. Automation is a way forward. If this market grows, like we heard earlier, a small fraction of companies in Spain have started automating, a small fraction even in the United States have started automating. There's so many more opportunities, and we can all benefit if more and more companies around the world are automating. So if a nation has a strategy to do that, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. The point is that they believe that this is the future. It's hard to imagine a future in which robotics and automation isn't central to the success of a nation.
I would propose to rather share best practices and collect ideas, which are the most important elements in a robotic strategy in different countries, also looking at their DNA, where they come from, where are their strengths and focuses, also in their kind of how their GDP is compiled. So I think that is something you could actually do on a global level to collect these ideas and give them advice. But I think if it's not coming from the governments itself, if you try to impose them some ideas and plant those ideas in the thought of the government, it's only half as successful as it could be. When it comes really from the government, if the understanding is there that they need a robotics industry and why they need it for, then I think that's more successful.
Søren?
As Susanne mentioned earlier, you cannot copy an ecosystem. And you cannot copy a national strategy for robots, drones, automation, or something else. But you can inspire each other. And you can also raise the awareness of both of the possibilities and the challenges. And there I think we have similarities, but also a common task. So when we're talking about, and you already seen it in the introduction slides, right? We do see a global competition that we need to be ready for. Then the decision makers will look, how do we do that? So I think that's to bridge the strategy, the high level strategy, with simply how to do it. And now I'll put it a bit down on ground. Now we're talking about high level strategy, and then I said it needs action. And just an example, also inspired from you, Susanne, because you're saying, then also make some decisions. Where do you see automation should go? We had last year what we call an innovation board. We invited greenhouses in a greenhouse, 15 different from the island of Funen. And they met technology providers, integrators, robot suppliers, and so on. Why? Because we wanted to create a common language. We are saying automation here and there, and then you will have a perfect productivity. What could that help a greenhouse? Suddenly they realized that this palletizing, that's something they could use. This collaborative robot could actually also be installed in the greenhouse. So they actually got aware of the possibilities. On the other hand, the technology providers were like, hey, a greenhouse, it's a manufacturing floor, perhaps a bit more glass around it, but it's manufacturing. So it's about, I think, we as ecosystems, organizations, collaborators, that if we can make a common language, also both targeted the decision makers, but also what I see as very importantly, the end users. Those are not automating today. Then we have the best fundament to inspire each other. And then we can also see both national, EU level and others follow this on the high level strategy focus. Yeah.
And what about regulations? No? So our sector in automation is global, no? So there's a lot of export and import, and there's a lot of technologies moving, no? And we have countries with different regulations in several topics. No, AI is the classical one on the table nowadays. But how do you feel that we can solve this gap about having different regulations depending the countries?
I think the robotics industry wants, when it comes to safety rules and some other standards, they want global standards. So they don't want the EU come in and say, oh, we're doing a robotics standard for Europe. They don't want it. We're doing it, it's slow, it's cumbersome, it's really, really tedious to get all the people from China, from Austria, US, from Spain, whatever, together and agree on something. But it's necessary because it's more economical to have a safety standard that is valid all over the world. And you don't have to do it for each. So that's important. The regulatory stuff, that is really too burdensome in Europe, and we have to speak out more against the Commission. Also, with the Draghi report, that has basically clearly woken up everybody in Brussels, but I know the people in Brussels, so they are now trying to deregulate and to streamline this, but they're not thinking out of the box. What is good is an approach called regulatory sandboxing. So you have like a sandbox, like where the kids play in the sandbox. Within that sandbox, everything is allowed and you don't have all the regulation. But recently we had a little meeting with some people thinking out of the box, developing crazy ideas. And one of the ideas was, if you know the story of Shenzhen in China, it was a little village on the other side of the border of Hong Kong. And it was like 30 years ago and it was poor. And they said, okay, we're a communist country, we have we have no market economy, planned economy, but this village here, we just call it a special zone, and you can do whatever you like. Just go for it. And then it kind of exploded, and it overtook Hong Kong in lightning speed. And everybody could not believe this. So I don't think we can do this in Europe, okay? But I think we could maybe create some acceleration zones where we have some areas where we have minimum regulation and maximum VC funding, not only for the initial part of the startups, but to get them through that valley of death, because they need patient capital. And robotics, you don't get into a market success in 2 years, you need more time. So I think we need to come up with some idea to get rid of too much regulation that hampers our initiative, our ideas, and our dynamics. And that is a big problem for Europe. So we need to add some other approaches, I don't know.
I also fully agree, we need more standards, globally agreed standards to safeguard the security and safety of people. And I see, in particular, if you look at Europe, for example, you have a lot of regulation that's done on national level still, though we have the EU. And then you have, you develop a technology for one country and then you want to expand to the next country and you have to adapt your product to that regulation in that country. So I think in many areas it's really hampering the development and in particular the deployment of robotic solutions, because like if you want to use a robot on the street, you really have to change the product, not even from country to country, but for instance in Germany from state to state, because you have different regulation there. So I think it's also looking at where is it really needed to safeguard the citizens' safety and security, and where is it just hindering innovation, and I think that we have to cut at some point.
Okay, so going to the part of resilience, no? So we have seen that the world has been changing 2020, 2022, no? Main events, no? So we have discovered, we already knew, no? But we have suffered a little bit the dependency on a lot of electronics that is done worldwide, that computing suppliers that you need. How do you think that the sector we can be more resilient to this global dependency? No? So we are talking about reshoring, but at the end you need parts and materials from everywhere. No? So it's not only the end production place. No?
You also need trained people. And I think that's an area where collaboration is possible too, sharing courses that have been developed that might help other countries. You can translate courses into other languages to help train people more quickly. If, you know, certainly there are programs that the US has developed, there's programs in Europe on how to train people. But I think it's more than just the products coming in to be resilient. You need to have a resilient workforce, if you will. And I think that's a major problem these days.
Okay, just to finish this part, in this case for Jeff, so do you see in the US a lack adopting automation? So do you feel, so you were mentioning a little bit more before, but I would like to enter a little bit more. If we are Europeans, we are with more knowledge of our market. Do you feel really it's behind, or?
The adoption could be stronger, and it will be stronger. There are signs that are very encouraging. One of them is we just had our Automate trade show a few weeks ago in Detroit. That show in the past 15 years has grown 10 times. 45,000 people signed up to go to the show. That tells me the demand is there. Every industry, the types of people who are coming to the show are from every industry. It used to be just, as we said, primarily automotive. But that kind of demand is going to lead eventually to significant growth, combined with the advances in the technology. The biggest barriers to automating in the United States, and I imagine around the world, complexity, cost, and how long does it take to get up and running? Companies around the world are making it easier, less costly, and faster to have solutions in place. And with advances in AI and vision and all the enabling technologies, adoption is going to go up significantly. Someone spoke about small and medium-sized companies. We've been talking about that for 4 decades at least, that we haven't reached them yet. We can do a much better job there, but it's getting easier, and I believe it's going to happen.
So then we will go to the block 2. So here we are talking about people mainly. So we'll be talent inclusion, democratizing robotics, no? So the problems that we have with the workforce, no? So how we build systems and ecosystems, no, that empower the next generation of innovators, regardless the background. How can we help to generate that? Sorry.
When we advise startups, we say, know your customer. That's the first one. When we're looking at ourselves, an ecosystem, know your stakeholders. What are the needs? The reason why we have Odense Robotics, and I've had that for 10 years, that is because of the industry need. It's because there was an industry saying, we need talent, we need visibility, we need somebody, a platform that can support tomorrow's company. So there's many parameters in this equation, but when it comes to how to build it up, you need to look at what do you have. And when you're looking at our ecosystem, it's a very young ecosystem. 25% of the companies or members of Odense Robotics was established after 2020. So we have a huge focus on how can we support the early stage startup and give them a good start in life. When we ask the companies every year about challenges, now I mentioned this about awareness, but they also every year point at lack of qualified workforce. How do we together solve that? When the drone technology started, as I mentioned, to be a focus, then there was technology, there was the facilities, but also then you needed the talent. Then the local university within a very short time suddenly had a robotics engineer with a drone profile. So this is about know your stakeholders, ensure them to get involved. So when we're talking about talent, or we're talking about people who needs to support the growth of robotics, we need more to build the robots. We also need more to use them. So when we would like to adapt robots into the construction sector, then we should ensure that the people working with the robots, they are used to do that. And when we would like to have the robots at our streets, that's the third one, is also to ensure that we are used to meet them at the streets. So I never saw that video before, but that's a way of putting the robots in front and actually, as you said, getting people prepared.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there are 3 elements. First of all, technology is working for us because it's getting easier and easier for people to use robotics technologies. You do not have to be a trained engineer anymore, but you can have a vocational training and still be able to adapt and work with robots. So that is improving and going into our direction. I think the second element is that we need to get people to embrace robotics and kind of look forward to work with robots rather than fearing them. I think it has to do with a lot of education. So if every school kid or has worked with a robot or has dealt with a robot during their school life, this will improve because then they see it rather as tools and supportive to help them and not fear the technology. That's the second part of it, of the equation. The third part and third element is to make sure education is there and ready. And I mentioned the vocational and educational training, and if you look across the different countries, what you get there is quite different. There are many countries where there is not yet the robotics technician available as a training course. So we have mechatronics technicians and so on in different countries, and it's hard to compare, and it's also difficult to companies working across borders to deal with that variety of educational backgrounds. The good news is the OECD is working on that issue. You probably all know the PISA tests, that we use to compare education at the school level at a certain age, and now the OECD is actually working on a comparable program for VET, for this vocational training courses. And I'm joining that group to actually come up with the joint elements. On one hand, this will serve in the future to compare the different educational programs, but it can also be seen as a great chance for those countries that do not have the robotics technician as a training course there yet. They can learn from that because they get the basic elements already compiled in one program. So this is actually, I see that as a next step to increase the number or the share of workforce that can actually handle robots in the future.
Patrick?
Just another little angle, as you said, you know your customer, yeah? And I think this is happening, but could happen much more, that we're not just developing a robot and then we're educating the people how to use the robot, all the way thinking that we devise the right robot for that person without even asking that person what the process looks like in everyday life. So a bit arrogance maybe in here, or ignorance or whatever, or no bad intentions, but maybe it's good to go into those trades that do not use robots today. For example, we have a startup in Berlin, they do painting robots, like for decorating walls. And they're developing it, but they're developing it with the companies you hire when you need your kitchen needs to be painted, you don't have time to do it yourself, you hire a painter, and they work with these companies and say, can you try and use it? And then they kind of, they're trying to learn together. And of course, the initial robot is far away from a real life scenario. But if we did that much more, and we did some co-developing with the future users, I think that would be a very good approach to get into new domains or application areas, and blood labs and construction work and agriculture. You have to talk to the farmers, and I think in humanoids they're doing that at the moment, where they have automotive companies and the humanoid, which is far away from replacing human in dexterity and flexibility, but so they're not just trying it out whether it works. So their idea is, automotive company, please tell me what you need and what my technology does not yet deliver, so I can in the future deliver that.
I think we deal with a lot of startups, and it's especially true what Patrick is saying. Construction is a great example. There's a startup I deal with in the US that when I asked them the question, okay, what is the whole point of what you're doing? Their explanation was, we're using 2 robot arms to put the brackets on buildings that take 2 people an hour to do. This 2 robot system can cut that to 15 minutes. In high-rise buildings, there are a whole lot of these things. You could speed up the building development by a year. That is the type of knowledge that the startup needs in order to sell an application like that. Because it's really cool to see the robot doing the thing, but the ROI for the company that's using it is the key. So if you don't start there, if you start with your technology, you're just not doing it right.
So next question will be about the workforce itself. No? So depending on the conversation, we complain that there's lack of people. No? So We need more people trained, we need more people with expertise and so on. On the other hand, sometimes you hear automation and robotics is coming to take out our jobs and so on. No? So on one side, we are saying we don't have enough people. On the other side, we say there's a risk. No? How you see that? Sorry?
Fortunately, in Denmark, it's never been a discussion if the robots are coming to take our jobs. It's now I'm saying from the beginning, without knowing when, it's been a common understanding that they're here to support us. So we are teaming up, for example, with the labor unions. They are saying we are all in for robots because they are supporting our members. They're not taking the job. So it's a really important point that you're saying here. Sometimes we think the challenge is there, but if it is, I've talked to other colleagues in other countries, not here, but other places where they actually, when they heard this about we are working together with the labor unions, we're like, how? If it's a problem, you need to take it up and discuss it, because then we are another place that we need to be. So just saying that's a barrier that is huge. I think it's local, national-wise, but so just saying, if you'd like to know how we did it, I don't think I can explain how we did it, but that we are doing it, and it is an important part.
Susanne?
I think in the manufacturing sector, it's different than if you look at the service sector. So I think the manufacturing sector in many parts of Europe, as Søren just mentioned, trade unions are in favor and they know about the benefits. So it's not a question. It's rather how you introduce that. So you have to also involve the workforce in introducing new solutions to take them on board. And I think that works well. But I also see that, particularly in the service sector or in industries overall that are not yet that well used to the robots, they fear the solutions much more. So we have to talk a lot to them and persuade them, take their concerns serious. And so I think that will be helping. But I think that's also certainly a question of cultural background and the perspective, because when we took up that topic on the IFR level, the Asian country representatives were looking at us, what's the problem actually? We do not understand that. Why are you not appraising the technology? So it's really a perspective, and I think Europe is critical in some parts of the workforce, not in all, and depending also on the country. I think in the US we also now saw that beyond the manufacturing industries there are like port automation, they are not used to automation, so they are really critical and fight against the technology at the end. And but in Asia, China has good programs. Japan, they are kind of keen to work with robots. So we have to work with cultural backgrounds as well.
This question has been asked since the beginning of when I got involved. It was the very first question people asked. Studies were coming out. Everybody was going to be unemployed due to robotics.
It's perfect, the 40 years anniversary time frame.
But the thing was, we started tracking data on this, and what we found was really interesting. In the United States, when robot sales go up, unemployment goes down. And when robot sales go down, unemployment goes up. And this was never truer than in the greatest expansion of robot adoption in US history from 2010 to 2019, let's say. Unemployment fell from around 10% to 3.5%. Why is that? It's because as companies are automating, they're also investing in people because they're winning new business, they're more competitive, and this is the story that we tell. Now, are there reasons to be concerned? The researchers are always saying it's different this time. You know, this time it's going to be replacing everybody. Okay, I don't believe that. But there are advances in artificial intelligence that have to give people pause and what that means. And so I think we do need to seriously look at the concerns of people who are worried. And we need to be able to speak to them in a way that they can understand that the jobs may change. What's likely to happen, because we're really good at creating things to do, is that we'll create safer, better, and hopefully higher paying jobs. I ask people when I talk about this, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you in the room thought 30 years ago there would be a high paying job called Search Engine Optimization Specialist? Nobody could have envisioned that, right? We're paying a lot of money for people to do that on our websites. Or app developer for iPhone. There was no iPhone 30 years ago. So these jobs constantly are changing, new jobs are emerging, and I think that will be the future.
Patrick?
Two things. So, first of all, I think we have to make jobs in factories more attractive because we have not enough people, but I think we have people, but the new generation is less likely to say, oh, I don't want to be an influencer, oh, I don't want to be an art director. I'd rather work in a factory where I work 8-hour shifts. Yeah? So how can we make that more interesting? So imagine you say, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work in a factory, I put metal plates in a machine, I wait 20 seconds and I'll take them out again, and then this repeats for 8 hours. Not really attractive. Now, you work in the same factory, you produce the same stuff, but you use robots. And maybe you haven't had an engineering degree or whatever, and that was easy to use, that robot, because of new technology, democratizing robotics, and all of a sudden somebody who just worked in a factory operates robots, can reprogram the robots, and meets the friends in the bar and says, what do you do? I work in a factory, we produce metal plates, and I operate robots. It's like, cool, yeah? So, I mean, that's a mind shift, and I think we need to make sure that workplaces in factories are attractive. And I think the only way to do that is with robotics technology.
Maybe, listening to all of you, we are failing in the way we communicate, or we make that the press is expressing how it's advancing automation and robotics. No? There are other areas that I see clearly they do an advancement and so on. Maybe it's bad for the society, but instantly the press buy it as something that it's really positive. Here, everybody wants to talk.
Yeah.
Second aspect I want to say very quickly. Susanne and I, a couple of years, looked at the Eurobarometer. So basically, the European Union asked regularly in all the member states, just citizens, 50,000 people from all the members, about different topics. There was one about robotics and autonomous systems companies. And we didn't do a thorough analysis, but we skimmed through the data, and basically there was a correlation. The countries that had low robot density, in those countries, the people were more wary or opposed or critical about robots, or saw them as job killers. Whereas when you looked at all the countries that were highly robotized, according to the robot density figures which we had, the attitudes towards robotics in the population were much better. So I think that's something that tells the story as well.
Okay. Then about the press, you think we are failing in the way we communicate as automation and robotics sector? Or we can do better?
I think we can do better in communicating the benefits of robotics and automation. I think we spend maybe a little too much time talking about what it can do in manufacturing or other industries. People really feel positively when you talk about how it can make the world better. Can we use robots to clean the environment? Can we use robots to build affordable housing? Can we use robots to find cures for rare diseases or treatments? Can we use robots to allow us to stay in our homes longer as we age? And when we talk about what the advances are in these spaces, it resonates with people. I understand that it would be great if they were older and didn't have to go to an assisted living facility, or if there was a cure for cancer because a robot was doing drug discovery much faster than people can do it. And so I think we need to talk more about those things. I know I do in my speeches, because I can see people thinking more positively about the technology rather than thinking it's a threat.
I think also the viewpoint from the media has changed over time. So at least in the last 10 years since I work in robotics, it has dramatically improved, and I think also media is going less into the direction why are robots killing jobs. but rather trying to understand where they are needed. We always can do better in explaining the narrative. I think to a certain extent the point is that if you all want to sell robots, you do not talk about all the beneficial things, how robots improve the happiness of the workers in the factories, but it's rather looking at return on invest. So at some point, I think it's just you're selling robots not for the sake of doing good to the mankind, but for being more effective in the company and supporting and increasing the competitiveness and in the long run, the revenues of the companies. But at the same time, you're improving the competitiveness of the companies. So I think the effects are, of course, more indirect that we are beneficial, that we're talking of most of the time. And I think maybe we need to be more honest about that as well. Maybe then our message is a bit more credible.
Thank you. Søren?
Don't underestimate the power of storytelling. I'm not saying that we are failing, but we need to storytell. We're talking about the SMEs, yes, we've been talking about the SMEs for many years. How do they implement more robots? Not by we are saying it, but because of course we are saying it. We are building robots, so of course you should buy one. No, look at the neighbor who got his first robot or her first robot. How did that go? So storytell. Odense is a robot city, they say. Some years ago somebody said, where's the robots? And if you ask at the streets, robots, Odense. Ask down here, it's robots? Oh yeah. So those also, maybe not know your customer, but know your landscape. So we are actually also investing in, it's all about innovation, I said it, but we're also looking into how can we storytell into the SMEs, but also into the citizens. Because actually we opened a pop-up, maybe not shop because we didn't sell robots, but for 3 months down at the main street in Odense, you could walk in and see which kind of robots that are being built in Odense and at other places in Denmark. So just saying, not failing, but do not underestimate that that's a very important tool.
Good point. Now we will go linking that to the third point that I was surprised the first time I saw in the International Federation Robotic Web, all the points in sustainability that can be helped, support, enhanced by automation and robotics. No? So this third part will go about the impact in society and about the part of sustainability. So first will be for Susanne directly, as was my learning starting point about all the topics and studies around. Which sustainability challenges are more effectively addressed by robotics and automation?
I think you know the graph in our slides, so it's really if you look at where robotics adds to sustainable development, it's so manifold. It basically almost attracts all the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. There are a few where it's a bit harder to tell a story on that. But for me, one early eye-opener when I started to work for the IFR, I was invited by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and they are looking actually how they can help countries to grow from a developing country to a developed country. And they were looking at, of course, industrialization. So robotics and automation was one of the big topics that we're looking at, how to support the countries to grow on that development scale. So it's not just about sustainability, and we have a lot of ideas how we can actually produce more energy efficient with robots, and it's also easy to say that robots also support us in developing renewable energy technologies. I think that's the most appealing ones, but the effects are much more diverse, and that's what I like about the technology is we are looking at really making workplaces safer, making it more attractive to mentioned that before, so how to make a workplace and industry more attractive, robots add to that. It's supporting health. We have learned in the pandemic how important it is to be separated a bit from each other, how labs can be supported with the use of robots, and also in agriculture, look at the impact. It's not only about robots used on the field to reduce the amount of fertilizers and herbicides used on the field. You have less soil compression, so it's more sustainable in the long run for the soil quality. But it's also looking downwards on the stream when you're handling the cropped goods and processing the food. You can use robotic technologies to be much more efficient and have less waste in the processing industry. So more foods comes from the fields to the customers, to the end users. That's just a few examples we're looking at.
Storytelling. But we are really trying to get more robots into the construction industry. And we do that because of productivity, because of working environment, but also because the robot is very, very precise. So it's actually using all the materials. So there's also thinking when we're actually talking about sustainability, often when we're talking about robot solutions.
I find that the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are less known in Europe for some reason. The first time I was introduced to that was some Japanese robot representative. He had this wheel, the 17 colors. I said, oh, what's that? I said, it's the United Nations. Okay, then we went to a workshop and we were working about this Good Work Charter. It was at Epson, subsidiary in Germany, and they had this huge lighting wall with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. When you get in, because that's the DNA of the company, they have a purpose. And so that was very interesting. And interesting process for me was when we wrote the Good Work Charter, and it's also in here. So there's 17 SDGs, and we had to check and discuss which ones benefit a lot from robotics, or where robotics makes a real difference or contribution. It's a very significant one to these SDGs. So that discussion was interesting, and we found more and more examples. And remember, we were discussing it, and we ended up saying 13 SDGs heavily rely on robotics out of 17. So I think it's amazing, but it's not, I don't know, do you feel that everybody knows what the SDGs are? In Spain, are they talking about it? Is it a very specialized subject, or do people talk about it? Not so well known, huh? So it's kind of sad because I think it's really great.
It's a really great storytelling thing to defend. No? So the other one, sustainability, will be the social impact. No? So obviously, sure, in the 85, talking about robotics and automation was more how to increase productivity, how to increase efficiency. That's it. No? Return of investment, and that's it. No? Now we are seeing how robotics and automation is evolving. It's in our homes. We have developments in robots that are linked to health and others. So how you see it? How do you see it?
I think from the Sustainable Development Goals, what's really having a big societal impact for me is if you use robotics technologies to actually support the next generation to learn STEM subjects, for instance. It's not just about bringing robots to school to teach them to use robots, but it's how you can use the robots to make them actually, because it's a cool technology, to make them actually learn mathematics and physics, because they can really understand why they are learning these subjects at school, because it had a real value for them in real life at the end. I like the impact it has on inclusion, on gender equality, because we're looking on a factory job is not only linked to heavy lifting, so it can only be performed by men, but women can actually at the same level work with robots. And right now, I just learned at the European Robotics Forum that tests on robot safety are typically developed only on male test subjects because it's mostly males that work in factories. But then if we change that, we have to adapt. So this brings new aspects in, and robots can help to include people in the workforce that could not do that before because they need some kind of support, they cannot work, they are disabled, or they have some mental disabilities, so robots can also help to include those people in an active work life. And so there's so many areas, and I mean, it's a long way until we'll all have a house-rolled robot. I think that we also have to be clear about that. This is actually not what's happening soon, but maybe it's that robot that helps the nursing staff in an elderly care facility. So I think that's where we see it more closer coming, and I think that's where society can then actually also embrace it a bit more, because the more and that's also one of the learning we saw from the Eurobarometer survey, as if someone has encountered connections with a robot either through work or through having a, say, cleaning robot at home, it makes them more positive about the technology. So I think in the long run, when we get from the factories or from the warehouse, from the closed operations of robots into having them more connected to society, this will help the society embrace the technology, and that will push it further, because then someone who's seen the benefits of a robot in private life will also come to their company and say, we should also introduce a robot here because it's easing our lives and making our jobs easier. So I think it can also have a spillover effect then on the industrial use of robots at the end.
One example, I don't know if it fits this discussion completely, but is which we looked more deeply into, was the blood labs that make the blood tests. You go to the doctor, and it needs to be processed. All the hospitals need to have one of these labs. It needs to operate 24/7. It's very costly, and so we have 3 issues with running into a problem with supply security. So if you have some diagnosis, your blood test is taken, and it takes a week because there's a shortage of these, that could be critical. So that can't happen. But we're running into a big problem, at least in Germany, probably in other countries in Europe as well, because first of all, the people who work in these labs, they're highly skilled. You can't just do that in half a year. It takes 3-4 years of training. They're all with the gray hair, the baby boomers, and so they will all retire. So if you want to get new people in, it's not the most attractive jobs. It's shift work and so on. Also, you have more people so you have more tests now that you can make, increases the demand, because the whole medical profession evolves and you have more blood tests. And also you have more and more old people, and the older you get, the more blood tests you need. So you have more and more blood tests that need to be done, but fewer and fewer people that do the blood tests. So the supply security is not there. So we need robots to take the simple jobs, unscrewing the caps or putting it in the centrifuge, taking it out. These things can be done by robots. I think there's many areas where we have to look at certain jobs, at certain supply securities, but we looked into that and it was really critical. I think it's really important to go into lab automation.
We're talking about the sectors, no? It has appeared already: construction, elderly care, agriculture. Following your example, can we mention some other examples that you see robotics a great future to change the way we build, the way we have food, the way we clean the windmills? So.
Well, one of the areas that we're seeing some movement in is food preparation. Companies like Chef Robotics, for instance, using their AI system to help put together prepackaged food that you might, find at a store. I think that's the first step to restaurant applications in cooking, which we've been talking about. Another one for decades, about robots flipping hamburgers. So there's some of that that's going on. I think there will be more of that in the future, because one of the problems that we're facing in the US, and maybe you're facing it here, a lot of restaurants aren't open on certain nights of the week. Why? They don't have enough people. And if the robots can fill in, even if it's just going to the kitchen and bringing the food to the table, allowing the people that they do have who are willing to work in a restaurant to interact with the customers, that could be a benefit. But this whole food area, I think, is promising in addition to the ones we talked about in healthcare and life sciences, and hospitals, another one, delivery of the materials and working with the skilled nurses so that they don't have to do those jobs. I just think there's so many of these opportunities out there in spaces where robots haven't traditionally been. We're going to see a lot more of that.
I think we have to also be a bit more creative on the robotic solutions because it's not likely that we have a robot that would support us in the same way as a human worker would support us. So if you look at the construction, there's only a few robots that actually build houses on site somewhere, but there are more prefabricated house elements that then are composed at the site, construction site at the end. So this is a solution kind of trying to overcome that you cannot mimic what's done manually right now with robots technology. And I think what you mentioned in the restaurants is also similar. You cannot replace the chef or the waiter 100%, but you could look at what is burdensome and try to find solutions for that. Or even if it's, maybe we also have to clear that it's not only the burdensome topics we can automate, but it's rather tasks that are easy to automate, and then the hard to automate tasks we still have to keep for the human workers, but then we can at least free them from other parts. So think more creative and try not to sell robotics can do everything, but try to also tell the story that we are trying our best, but we will not be able to replace that machine with human that is just there for so many years, has evolved over centuries. And another element we should not, and I think that is a call also to all the SMEs that come up with great ideas. So we see a lot of SMEs that are founded by people coming from the universities with the idea we have a great technology and there must be a market for that. So let's first develop the technology further, and at some point when I'm looking at the market, I'm trying to convince the people out there that my product's actually the best fit for their problem, which maybe isn't, because I have not talked to them at an early stage where it's really your pain point and how would you be able to invest in my technology. And then another element is to look at procurement processes, and I know, and I have talked to people in the healthcare industry that there are robots supporting them, but they actually cannot use them because health insurances would not pay for the use of robots. So they can only pay for the service if it's done by a human being. So we also have to be more creative on those processes, and maybe also the companies have to be aware of that and also work with the governments. It's a slow process, it will take some time, but we have to work on such issues. It's kind of, you're talking about robots being used in a hospital to support logistics, but then you stop at the elevator because the robot cannot use the elevator. And there is no standard yet, really on a global scale, that supports the communication between the robot, the mobile robot, and the elevator. Because the elevator companies typically sell to households or to pure housing buildings. And not to hospitals and so on. So they do not have the need to develop these interfaces to communicate with other technologies in the house, or just opening doors is a simple problem. So we also need more standards being developed on a global scale, because it's so costly for those companies developing the mobile robots to actually also then develop all the interfaces to the doors, to the elevators, to each brand needs different interfaces. So that's hampering further deployment because it's adding to the costs of those systems.
Yes, arriving to the end, so we have done the 3 blocks. So we go to a small part about clusters, associations, and how you think that are the main divergences that we may find around the world. How we can support globally the movement of automation and robotics, which is our paper on that. No? So which are the problems, which are the common points, and how can we help?
I think we see so many things that are common for all of us. I mean, there are some localizations, some differences, yeah, but 80% or the main points, I think they're valid for almost all of us. And I think if everybody communicates these and we kind of talk about it among ourselves, how we can kind of help each other out and what we can do together. But if the European Commission gets that from not just from the VDMA, but also from AER and others, that will be much more effective and have more impact. And then on a global level as well, I think United Nations, some stuff you can probably talk about. I think we need to coordinate a little bit more, but I think there's a lot of it's all the same topics, and we can really join forces easily.
Easy to say, but we need to bring the good intentions into action. So that's also what I'm hearing you to saying, because we are having good relations in the global robot community. How do we actually precise also utilize these experiences and learnings that we have done through our individual ecosystems? Now we're talking about adaptations, and now you ask for new markets, and I could see many new markets, but then what? All the time, hospital sector keep popping up, because we've been working with that for 40 years, by the way. But we're still either ending at the elevator or ending at actually having nurses and other good people at the hospitals who like to work with the robots, but it comes and ends to the test. How do we ensure that's actually also bought by the hospitals and implemented? So these experiences, then I think we need to put them into to play at a global collaborative level.
I think it's a big part of our work of the IFR to actually work on the collaboration, to share common views, but also support our members in understanding the differences. I think it's kind of one example I learned when I attended ICRA in Philadelphia was that lawn mowing robots that are used in Europe quite often, where you have big lawns, but they are not working on the US market because of different issues. But that it was something, we're doing statistics on lawn mowing robots for quite some time, but I wasn't aware of that even. So I think it's kind of understanding the commonalities and understanding the differences and talking about the same language. And then if we have this common ground, I think it will be a great step forward. And our members, most of our members are working on a global scale, so at the end it's easing their business to understand these local differences.
So then, to end, we will go to new tendencies and the future or present. So maybe you discover that some things are present. So the first question will be regarding humanoids. How do you see the trend that is going on? Which are your perspectives? Which is your feeling about humanoids?
Well, I've been pretty vocal on this. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical because of the promises that are being made from some of the companies who've raised a lot of money and from companies and individuals who have a lot of money and are developing humanoids about the speed at which we're going to see them, not just in factories, but some of the companies are saying in our homes we're going to have them in the next year. The reality is today there's no humanoid robot that's safe enough to work around people, at least that I'm aware of. Maybe in China they're doing it, but they don't often follow the same safety standards that we do in the US. But every US humanoid robot, whether it's in a pilot or in production, is being kept away from people because they're not safe enough yet. How soon will they be safe enough? Maybe a year, maybe next year. But safe enough to be in our homes, it's going to be more than that. We're not going to have hundreds of thousands of these in factories anytime soon. That seems unrealistic to me. Again, other people feel differently. Certainly, major companies are talking about physical AI or embodied AI changing the game, and I could be wrong. But I've seen things hyped before And when the hype crashes, it gives a black eye to the entire robotics industry. So count me in the category of skeptic. However, in order to air all the viewpoints, we're having our own humanoid robot forum for the second year, this year in the fall in Seattle, because it's important to keep an eye on this technology. Whether it develops quickly or not, it's going to develop. There are applications that would benefit from a humanoid. Again, I don't know if it's a biped or if it's a humanoid torso on a mobile base, but they're going to develop. The reality is the customer wants solutions. They don't care about the form factor. But if they find a form factor in a humanoid that can work 20 hours a day, even if it's slower than a person, they're going to take advantage of it. So I believe there is a future, not as fast as we're being told.
I'm also quite critical and skeptical about the humanoids, but I think what looking at this discussion, or following that discussion for a while now, is it's trying to solve the need. We have a lack of workers, so we have to, and kind of, we already have a lack of workers, but it will be coming to some countries very severe in the future. So we have to find the solution for the problem, and they are trying to look at humanoids on that part. To a certain extent, I think it's a lot of competition. It's also about being the first country to really be able to solve that issue. So it's also one of the motivations behind that. And I think in the long run, it will have, it's a form factor, but at the long run, I think it's not about whether it has legs or wheels or so on, but it's about the way of the robot being programmed. So it's more about the ability of application of AI and robotics technology, that the robot kind of easily learns, or I can just show them, and because it has a human form factor, it's easier to train that robot because I can mimic what humans are doing. So I think in the long run, that will also certainly be an effect it will have on the robotics industry, also on mobile robots, on traditional industrial robots, is the way we are using the technology and training the technologies and programming, or not programming the technology anymore. I think that will be the effect.
We are talking about awareness, we're talking about public awareness. Everybody is talking about humanoids. Everybody can relate to a humanoid because suddenly it's the robot that I can understand, right? Because I've seen it in fiction, in movies. So it's a great ambassador for robots. Humanoids are not the answer for everything. As drones, as collaborative robots, there's definitely a market for them. I would also be skeptical or raise the awareness of saying there is a long way from the humanoid we would like to have and the ones we are seeing today. So I'm just saying we also have other robot automation solutions that we need to develop, and perhaps I'm saying this to ourselves, but also to when we put in the innovation funds, of course we should exploit and utilize the new technology, but let us also give it time because it needs time.
Now we were able to see yesterday in Eureka, no? Tiago going to pick the...
Yeah. That was a good demonstration.
With LLM, Tiago was going to pick some medicines to a patient. So we were seeing that yesterday in the session with Odense and Eureka. Patrick?
So there's not a word being said that I would disagree with, so yes, but another angle would be to say, I was thinking that the AI pushes the robotics development, it's certainly true, but you could see the other way around. Are the humanoids giving a big push to AI progress? And I think that is the case. Because to have a humanoid with the dexterity, with the human-machine interaction, to understand the world, and having the same form factor as a person, you can use YouTube videos, obviously, with people in it, has the same form factor to train the humanoids, and you can use actual people with some suits, motion suits, to train them. So I think what's happening is we should go away from the discussion, do robots need legs? Is that just bullshit and we need only wheels? we should leave that discussion aside, because that we'll see what happens. But the upper body, the torso, eye-hand coordination, how a robot understands the world and gets some kind of autonomy, how we don't program a robot, but the robot kind of programs itself. It has a basic knowledge of the world in these foundation models. It has basic skills for gripping and various objects, and we just need to refine that. So that, I think, will spill over into normal robotics, into cobots, into industrial robots. And so I find it very important that we keep up with this development, even if they will not be in the factories in larger numbers anytime soon, even if they won't be in the households. I think there's a step change in how AI is pushed in mechatronic systems, this physical AI. It's easier to do AI that's just in the digital world, but if you have a physical thing like a humanoid robot, that's tough. And you see immediately how good the AI is, and probably it's not good enough to do real world things in the real world. So I think this will give a big push, and if we're not playing that game somehow, we're lost behind when this goes into a new era of robotics in the factories. That may be just a robot arm, but the way that robot arm is programmed and understands the environment and what to do is a completely different story from how we do it today. So I would think it's very important to keep up with that development very much. Even if all the critical things are very, very true. I believe that too.
Then another tendency is drones. So there could be a discussion if there's a robot or not, but for sure it's automation. So you were mentioning before Søren drones, so maybe you can start with your position and how you see the future of drones.
It is flying robots, by the way. I think so. No, it's actually interesting with drones because let's just say in 2016, we'll say next year, drones everywhere, all over, because you can deliver pizza, you can deliver this and that. Now, 10 years later, we're not doing so. It's of course a matter of technology development, business cases, but also ensuring that they are integrated in the airspace together with manned traffic. So I do see a huge potential still for unmanned systems. Some of them will fly, some of them will drive, some of them will sail, some of them will dive. There's a huge potential for drones in aerial matters, but we also have, for safety reasons, security reasons, and much more, a huge task. And here we are talking about actually EU working together, ensuring that we have the law, we do that, but also help each other, also how to interpret that law and how to bring it into use. So we're working very much on this. In 16, in the Danish National Strategy for Drones, it told us it could be the next wind turbine adventure, maybe, but it takes time.
Then the other technology we have mentioned, because it's impossible not to mention before, artificial intelligence, especially we know machine learning has been on robotics and automation since a long time, no? But the part of generative AI, we were seeing yesterday interactions with robots through language. How do you think that may shape the industry?
Well, I think AI is already changing the industry. Giving robots the intelligence to pick items they've never seen before, how to figure out how to grasp them. I think you're going to see tremendous advances in AI that's going to make robotics more effective. The dangers, though, are there. And I want to go back to drones for a second because it's the same thing. So one of the concerns that people have and should have about these technologies, are they safe to humanity? I mean, where's the biggest application of drones that the general public sees? They're military applications hurting people. AI has the potential of doing that as well. Now, when I talk about that, I say that that's on us as people. If we use these technologies to hurt people or to do bad things, that's a human issue, not a technology issue. But I do think that we're seeing more and more potential in these technologies to do things that aren't helpful. And so I think we need to be aware of that.
I just want to say I totally agree on that point of view. It's a very important point of view, but also there's also a reason why it takes time. Because we can also say, well, it's not. Why do we not use the technology? It's here. Maybe it is, but it takes time to integrate it in the way we like to do it.
But it also has a huge potential to open up new markets, because it's, first of all, it will be easier to adapt robotic solutions to new environments. Will make it easier for people to interact with the robots, so acceptance will grow as well. But yeah, fully agree, it takes time, it will not happen overnight, and we have to take the concerns serious. I think it's, we have to find answers to those questions asked by the public, by the media, by policymakers, and otherwise the technology will not succeed.
I think that a new approach called vision, language, action models is just pushing the boundaries a lot. See what happens with that. So basically you combine the machine vision, and that is a generative AI, and the language instructions you get from the human operator, and the robot or the AI has a world knowledge already from seeing things and just understanding the scene without being programmed. And then the human operator says something, and then that's combined, and an action is generated. I think that's the really big difference between the old AI and the new generative AI, what you can do with that. I think it'll push the boundaries a lot.
Yeah, I think also the application of AI and simulation and digital twin technology, it's speeding up the development of robotic solutions, it's speeding the time to actually implement them, and it's allowing you to know in advance what to expect, and then once the system is running, to give more feedback to the digital world and how to improve it more. Those are big advances.
Just one word of warning, I say, when I was at the European Robotics Forum, I was a bit surprised that the new focus of the European Commission is just on the application of AI, or the use of AI. We need to develop AI, AI is everything, it's not about robotics anymore, it's about AI. But it did not become clear to me why exactly, what are you using it for? I think as robotics is just a tool to achieve a certain goal, AI is also just a tool, or maybe AI right now is a tool to serve robotics, which is again a tool. So to just say we need to work on AI, improve AI, and we should spend all our research money on AI is for me too short-sighted, because we have to identify where is it bringing the largest benefits for the European society and also for the economy, and then look at who is going to pay for it. At the long run, you can push in some research money in the beginning, but you have to find early customers for the technology, because that is pushing the next wave of development. So we have to really be more pragmatic also to why do we need it and where do we use it for.
Thank you. So we are running out of time, so now it's the moment for the questions and answers. So don't fight, please.
Any questions? Spanish audiences are known for not making too many questions, just so you know. But, yes, you can ask in Spanish, we can translate for you. Please don't be shy.
I think that they already know me, but I'm Francesco Ferro from Robotics. You were speaking about humanoids, no? One of the last questions was about humanoids. But also Patrick mentioned something very important, that you are creating probably a roadmap about humanoids in Europe. What is your idea how we can compete in Europe? Because we speak about nationalism, so each country has to have some development, but how we can compete against US or Asia at this moment, not only for human, but in general. What's your opinion?
I would say where do we have to stand and how do we compete is with the humanoids. The question is, do we need humanoids made in Europe? Will they be better, or is our skill more in using the humanoids, finding the right applications on the consumer side, customer side, finding the right applications in industry, because we are having a well-progressed industry, we have a good robot density in the industry, manufacturing industry, so maybe we're better placed to then develop the solutions with the technology developed somewhere else. Maybe we also need our own humanoid in Europe, I don't know.
Well, there are companies in Europe developing humanoids, like Neura, obviously, right? So I think there's opportunities for you to compete globally. I agree with Susanne that the application is probably more important, but I think it's too early to say who the leaders are going to be in terms of having the most successful humanoids. There's plenty of room right now for innovation. Just because there's a lot more money going into it, obviously in China and in the US, doesn't mean that they're going to be the ones that ultimately win this humanoid race. So, you know, I think you've got big opportunity there.
I think scaling it is a big challenge, because the Chinese have already done that and they get price points through mass production of components. So I think we really need to somehow see how we can do that, because if we only buy the Chinese robots or American humanoid robots, we're kind of out of the game. I think we can apply them, so we can be good at applying them in certain use cases, but you know, if you don't develop that technology, you kind of lose track of the cutting edge that's happening. I think that's risky. I think we really need to be there and try to compete on that level and also bring it to market at scale. If that ever happens, I don't know, but if it happens, it should also happen from Europe in European production products, because otherwise we're kind of losing, you know, the competitive edge that might be interesting or important for other fields as well.
Yeah, be sure to identify the use cases and the application areas. So I think that's very important that we also on EU level can have the discussion. We have been discussing humanoids actually for many years also in the European Robotics Forum, right? Let's turn it around and focus on what could we actually use them for in a European context.
Hi, my name is Andres Garcia. I'm from the university. I'm working in research with few students. So some students are working on flexible robotics, soft robotics. Some of the students are working with machine learning to improve efficiency for the motors, and other students working on machine learning to improve the design to make it lighter. So what's your point of view? Where can we help the university to improve this robotics work?
What we think has been working for us is bringing the industry in your lab and then seeing what they could be used for. And I actually mean that in more ways, because we discussed this yesterday. This is about what we're talking about when we're talking about academia collaboration with the industry. First of all, we're talking about being close connected to the talent and use that already with their students. So first of all, you're getting relations to maybe your coming employee, but you are actually also use the interaction or the relation to show the students where the companies they see the ways of. So this combination actually taking real industrial problems or possibilities into the lab or into the students' daily life. That's the way we see it.
Yeah, I will also advise to talk to the industry people, not just to us association guys, because we do not have the overview of where really pain points are, but I think you can support the industry in solving those hard to solve issues, because you have manpower, you have highly skilled people at university scale, so try to collaborate there and try to make the best fit. Also, if you're having good developments, you need to have the collaboration with industry people to bring them to the market maybe at the end?
As a cluster, we actually see that as one of our main roles is actually also to be the bridge, because I worked 10 years at the university and thought it was obvious what the industry should use all the good research for. Then I didn't change table, but I changed seat, and now I'm representing the industry also. I can see that this bridge is needed. So we actually, both when we're talking about connecting students and researchers to the industry, there is a need in an ecosystem, somebody doing this on the one hand, but also on the other hand, and back to the discussion we had earlier on about the educations. The industry, they don't know which educations the universities and other good educational institution has or have, of course, because they're focused on producing. So this is about common language and bridging the you could see the interests. That's needed in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think in the universities that I've dealt with over the years, there's been a disconnect between what the students know about what's going on in industry and the problems that they're working on. So oftentimes we find universities where there's students who are working on problems that have been solved and they're not aware of that. And I think there's not enough of that. Going the other way, to Søren's point, it's easy for companies to work with researchers at universities that they know. So in the United States, Carnegie Mellon or MIT, those are ones that come up a lot. But there's a lot of great work being done at other universities that they're not aware of. So we need to do a better job, and we try as an association, to connect our members, our industry members, to our university members that are doing good work that maybe are not as well known.
Because my idea to bring the question here was to let the people know that IQS is a university where we do industrial engineering since 25 years, and most of the people, they don't even know. Thank you.
Third question? Over here?
Yes, one easy question for you. Well, I'm Daniel from Bieller. We have been talking a lot about the uses of the AI, and I have a question regarding how we can use AI in functional safety. What if we have to make the safety of the operator rely on AI algorithm? Is this something that can make used to make safety more flexible, and in the end more productivity to our machines and robotic cells? Or should we keep the last, let's say, part of the chain of the safety into a deterministic algorithm programmed by an operator? What's your opinion about that?
I'm way out of my comfort zone with this, my knowledge, yes. But I would guess that I think there needs to be a deterministic element in it. And the potential is to reduce a lot of risk with a high level of probability. Say you could maybe use AI to avoid situations that are potentially harmful with, say, 95%, it's brilliant. But the last 5%, you can't just do, I think you need that chain is only as strong as the weakest link, and I think there must be some deterministic last resort decision maker in there, and I think that's how I see it. But I think there's potential to add it so the whole system becomes safer or more usable and safe. So that's how I would see it, but I'm not the super expert here, sorry.
I think the European Commission has already answered that partly because it has put a very high threshold to use AI in the field of functional safety, and I think we need more time also to create the trust in the technology, because it's a black box for us right now, and people do not trust that black box so far. So to also improve the trust in the tech, yeah, it's black box. Yeah. So to increase the trust in robotics technology overall, I think it would do good to wait to implement AI in this most critical part of the robotics technology.
Okay, we have 2 more questions.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, Javier de la Cuerda from Structure. My question is, well, first, congratulations about the roundtable. It has been great. Well, we are clearly in a game-changing scenario, and this is clear. With new players coming inside of this scenario, I see that there are new players coming from the IT environment and from cloud environment. And my question is related to how do you see those players, and mainly focus on the cloud service providers, Azure, AWS, Google. How do you see them in this new changing scenario?
So I think they can add a lot of value. Look at NVIDIA and stuff like that, but also the cloud providers. But there's an alternative approach that's coming out of Europe, which is the data space idea. This is different than just getting the Azure cloud or Amazon Web Services cloud and giving your data to them, and they promise you to treat them safely. It's a system that's more like distributed, and it's transparent for those who should know the data, and you can very clearly say who can do what with what data for how long. And it's a clever system. It's being developed with the data space technologies, and it's also pushed by the IPSATSIS Cloud Edge infrastructure for Europe. There are over 120 research projects, a lot of them in aerospace in Europe, because the European Union is building this very low latency, low energy consumption cloud edge infrastructure for all over Europe. And the data space idea is a central part of it. And in Germany, we have the manufacturing and Factory X programs. They're trying that out. So it's a paradigm shift on how we can share data. And you need to share data to use AI in a more transparent, safer, cheaper way. So maybe it's good to look into the data space technology, industrial data spaces. It's a new alternative approach.
I think that Gaia is regulating that. That means that data governance is something that is well covered at the moment, at least in the UA, and this is something that is happening. And I don't feel that the market is seeing that as an issue. I understand that it is covered by regulation, and there are strong rules for managing that. What you are saying, fully agree, okay? But my feeling is that this is being managed at the moment. Now the point is, I see those players and also some European local players that are trying to develop a lot of technology that it is very useful in the automation environment, connecting everything, obviously connected with data, and having clear that data has to be safe, secure, and obviously with the right governance. My question is more related to, do you think that those players will be entering inside of this market and start providing services as they are providing software as a service in the automation environment, in the robotic environment?
I think that's the plan, but I'm not sure if it would be successful in the end. I can't really tell you. No. But I think the Gaia X thing was, the foundation has not really flown, and now with other initiatives that are building on top of that, they want to get them into use and application and the market. So let's hope this is going to work.
Yeah. Maybe you can add that. So I do see that the cloud providers maybe are interested in selling additional services to the robotics industry compared to what they do now. So they're pushing to the market. And I think the robotics industry would do good to not let them take that part of the cake. With respect to the AI companies coming into the robotics field, I think that's more of a crucial question. Maybe the robotics companies, players need to take more responsibility and empower themselves to develop those solutions by themselves, and also take this part of the market, because hardware maybe will be less important or less part of the whole equation than the software side of robotics. So I think that is important, that the robotics companies do stay active or even get more active in that field of AI, to come up with their own solution, or not just accepting what others supply to them.
Okay, thank you. We have one final question.
Well, there is Corta from Infernal Bieller. One of the outputs that I'm taking today is that we are talking less about industries, more about people. I wonder if in the next future we have to look at the statistics, not only industries, about how many people we are convincing for robotics. So I wonder which are the levers we should use to let people force our governments, our authorities, to really implement these national strategies. I remember during a brainstorming session here at the AR that someone spoke about having a TV show like, after MasterChef, everyone wants to cook. After Dancing with the Stars, everybody wants to dance, right? So why not TV show? But jokes apart, a part of the education, what do you think, which are you think are the levers that we need to activate to convince people?
It's a really good question. So overall, maybe not the right answer, but our kids, they go to soccer, to handball, and so on and so forth. They can also go to robotics in Odense. There's a robot school, and when my daughter 3 years ago skipped the handball summer school, she went for the robotics summer school. So there's something in our common understanding of what it is. TV shows, maybe, but it's about implementing it really early in our mindsets. Not because the technology is the answer to everything, but we need to be able to both to understand it, but also to ask the right questions. So 2 years ago, a school in Odense was ready to be refurbished, the buildings and all the rooms at the school. At the same time, they also decided to be the world's best robot school for kids in the younger classes. And why? Because of what you're saying here, that's actually just as normal as looking in a washing machine, which you also can call a robot, but also have another understanding of what robots are. Not the specific answer to your question, because it's a lovely, complicated one, but it's very important that we actually are thinking it into our daily life. And there I see, of course, the educational platform is important, but I also actually think that we should try to think new. And this is about having that you can actually go to robots. Maybe it's Lego Mindstorms, but still, it's a mindset behind it.
I think that's a really great question. In America, Hollywood has done a great disservice to the American people by making them believe Terminator was what the outcome was. But we have some really great programs in the United States, like First Robotics, it's global. The problem is, these are extracurricular activities. Vex Robotics, which goes a little bit younger, they're not part of the daily curriculum in schools. So it's a rare that you see a school that has robots as part of the curriculum. If it were, and you got to kids early enough, and they got to develop their own connection to the technology and do stuff in school that they made, I think that would go a long way. But addressing on a national schedule TV shows and other things like that, that's harder. But I think that comes as kids get started with it, and they become the innovators, and they become the people deciding what shows we watch and what movies are made. I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I totally agree there's a need for focus change, because when I'm looking at the recruitment, now we're talking about recruitment to the industry, but then if we go to the university level, recruitment of students, we are looking at high schools and such, and saying, we should remember to get them ready for technology educations. Maybe that's already too late. So this is about changing the focus. Because I totally agree that it's great to see movies with robots in or TV shows, but not going to change your understanding of what they can do in daily life. It was actually also my point with the humanoids from before, because I do see potential also at European level, but we also need to put into place where do we actually see the use cases. Actually the same story for the drones, because yes, there are many concerns about implementing them in, for example, in integrated airspace. But where can we see the European humanoids, right? Do the use case or the application? Great question.
Okay, so with that, we are closing the session. I hope you like the roundtable and it has been interesting. And now we have a small surprise. So we were talking about collaboration and how to make things go better, how to make social impact, sustainability, how we can work together at the end. So the last days and weeks, no? So we start with an idea from Alex, normally, usual. And we were thinking that maybe knowing the topics that we were talking, we could achieve an agreement and generate what we are calling the Declaration of Barcelona on Robotics and Automation, okay? Where the 5 organizations, clusters, whatever we want to call us, we agree on a preamble, a shared vision about competitiveness, demographic challenges, safer, accelerating transition, support human well-being. We have a joint commitment. Here it's simple. It's fostering collaboration, it's promoting training, it's advancing on ethical innovation and supporting the development. And we have this as a starting point with the target to have a more broader and longer, no? Patrick was saying before, 80% of things we can agree that we can have as a shared vision of how we can help and how policy can help society through robotics and automation. So I want to thank a lot Alex for the idea, the team, Alfonso, Raquel for preparing, and especially Patrick, Søren, Susanne, Jeff for agreeing to that, for working with us to achieve this one-page agreement and to come today and sign it with us. Okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we've come to the final part of the institutional act. Before we leave, we'd like to take a family group picture. So we're going to ask you to just please stand up right where you are, and our official photographer, yes. Oh, okay. Okay. The photographer will come down here on stage and maybe guide you a little bit on how to make everyone fit in the picture, okay? Please stay till the end. I will tell you, I can tell you right now. After the picture, you may go directly to the 4th floor, the rooftop, where the cocktail will be taking place, but it's not this elevator, okay? So you need to walk this skyline, walk all the way to the end and either take the lift or the stairs that will take you to the rooftop. Okay, thank you very much. And please, the 5 of you, please stay after the picture for a group picture of you. Okay, thank you.
And since this is an anniversary, you don't come to an anniversary without a present. So this is something from the IFR. Our appreciation on congratulating you to that achievement. For your office.
And I didn't have a better idea, but just so you can have a toast to the 40 years, I think it's enough for the board. Okay. Don't drop it. Okay.